So by now, I'm a little bit late to the party on this, but everyone's already talking about how Joe Scarborough claims that Donald Trump asked 3 times to a foreign policy advisor whether or not he could use nuclear weapons and why he couldn't use nuclear weapons. So let me show you that clip so that way you have the context in case you haven't seen it yet. But then after that, we're going to come back and actually discuss the implications of this and whether or not there's any validity to that claim that Joe Scarborough made.
Several months ago, a foreign policy expert on the international level went to advise Donald Trump, and 3 times he asked about the use of nuclear weapons. 3 times he asked, at one point, if we have them, why can't we use them? That's one of the reasons why he just doesn't have foreign policy experts around.
Trump asked 3 times.
3 times in an hour briefing, why can't we use nuclear weapons?
First of all, before I even discuss this, many people are challenging the validity of this claim because clearly it's just hearsay. You know, it's what one person told another person told another person. So, I mean, is there a possibility that this is embellished? Yes. Is there a possibility that it's entirely made up? Sure. But here's my question. Is this story really that unbelievable? We've seen all of the antics, all the shenanigans that Donald Trump has done. I don't think this is very unbelievable. And when you actually look at his response to a question during a town hall on MSNBC on whether or not he would use nuclear weapons, this was his response.
Can you tell the Middle East we're not using a nuclear weapon on anybody?
I would never say that. I would never take any of my cards off the table.
How about Europe? We won't use it in Europe.
I'm not going to take it off the table.
You might use it in Europe?
No, I don't think so. But
well,
I'm not
just
taking,
say it. I'll never use a nuclear weapon in Europe.
I am not taking cards off the table. I'm not going to use nukes, but I'm not taking any cards off the table.
The trouble is that the sane people hear you, and the insane people are not affected by your threats. That's the trouble.
So you saw it right there. He would not take using nuclear weapons against Europe off the table. Now, again, to be fair to him, he said he wouldn't use them, but he still wouldn't take using them off the table. Do you want to know what you say if you have no plans to use nuclear weapons? No. It's very simple. You don't have to do a little dance like he did. You just simply say no. So after seeing him say that, after seeing him squirm a little bit when answering the question as to whether or not he would use nuclear weapons as president, is it really that difficult to believe? Joe Scarborough's story? I don't think so. And even if, it's just remotely true, if he asked 1 time why he can't use nuclear weapons, that should be disqualifying. If you pose an existential threat, not just to the US, but to humanity, you should be disqualified. So here's what I want to hear a presidential candidate say if he or she is asked whether or not they would use nuclear weapons as someone with the nuclear launch codes. I want them to say not only that they're going to take using nuclear weapons off the table entirely, but that we're actually going to get rid of our nuclear weapon stockpile and work with other nuclear nations to ensure that they do the same. I want a world that is free of nuclear weapons. We don't need to end humanity because 2 countries are bickering. No matter what you're bickering about, no matter what dispute you have, it's not worth killing the planet off. So nuclear weapons, I am 100% against nuclear proliferation, and I think that each country who has nuclear weapons needs to get rid of all of them, 100% of them. And the thing that's scary is that someone like Donald Trump, who's an egomaniac, he would have access to the nuclear launch codes, and these are readily available. It's not something that, there's a 30-day waiting period if he says he wants to activate nuclear weapons. It happens like that. They're meant to be used quickly. So this is terrifying. And someone like Donald Trump, who is of the belief that any and all press is good press, even bad press, well, don't you think that it's believable that he would want to use nuclear weapons just so that way he could be in the history books forever? I mean, even if he's the bad guy, I think he's willing to be the bad guy if it means that he'll be remembered forever. He'll cement his position in history. He's unstable, and he has the temperament of an 8-year-old. So, yes, I do believe that if he's having a bad day, maybe he will use nuclear weapons. I mean, again, even if you discount what Joe Scarborough said, he couldn't answer the question about using nuclear weapons clearly. If you can't say that you will not take using nuclear weapons against Europe, one of our allies, off the table, then you're just not fit to be president. Now, let's be 100% fair here. Is it the case that Hillary Clinton is any better? Well, when it comes to using nuclear weapons against Iran, this is what she said.
And one of the ways of testing it is to make it very clear that we are not going to permit them, if we can prevent it, from becoming a nuclear power. But were they to become so, their use of nuclear weapons against Israel would provoke a nuclear response from the United States, which personally I believe would prevent it from happening.
Did I hear her say that she is prepared to threaten Iran with nuclear annihilation, even though she doesn't think it's going to come to that? And even though the national intelligence estimate says, in fact, if anything, Iran is going backwards in terms of its seeking a nuclear device?
You did hear that correctly, yeah.
So it is the case that Hillary Clinton also would not rule out using nuclear weapons. Now, she didn't say against Europe or one of our allies, but she did say she wouldn't rule it out against Iran. And in response to that statement, she said, what I said and what I mean is that there will have to be consequences for any violation by Iran, that the nuclear option should not at all be taken off the table. That has been my position consistently. Now, thankfully, I'm not so worried about Hillary Clinton using nuclear weapons because we now have the Iran deal that prevents them from acquiring nuclear weapons. And if you've actually read the agreement, then you'll see that contrary to the belief of conservatives, it's a peace deal that puts a cap on their nuclear program. But the fact that Hillary Clinton would even consider using nuclear weapons against anyone, and she said it would not at all be taken off the table, well, we can't just put a lid on that now that Iran is, they're not going to get nuclear weapons for now. We have to really take that into account. Now, when you put Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump side by side, I don't trust either of them with the nuclear launch codes. Democrats often like to be as war hawkish as possible because they're always accused of not being tough enough by Republicans. So then you see them trying to flex and pretend to be strong just so that way they can dodge criticism from Republicans who are going to criticize them no matter what. Many of you missed it because the mainstream media probably didn't mention it, but as of this last week, we just started a war with Libya. We are doing drone strikes in Libya now against ISIS. That's called war. We started a war with Libya. Nobody really knows about it. So how many countries are we going to go to war with? So look, getting back to this issue of using nuclear weapons, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are both dangerous. But is it the case that Donald Trump would probably be more likely to use nuclear weapons than Hillary Clinton? Yeah, I believe that. If you actually have to ask a foreign policy advisor 3 different times why you can't use nuclear weapons, then not only are you not intelligent enough to be president because ending humanity is not acceptable, but you also don't have a moral compass, and therefore you shouldn't run the country and be a very powerful person, the most powerful person in the world, effectively. This should disqualify Donald Trump, and if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, you need to rethink your position.